Okay, so good morning, first of all. Thank you so much for joining me. And I can't remember the exact topic that I put, but what we want to try and do this evening is perhaps uncover or peel back a little bit of some aspects of Kriyas Yam Suf, the Omer, and the way that this acts as the journey towards Matan Torah. And I perhaps slightly cheekily spoke about the what of water, and I'm not sure if we're going to manage to do that tonight. There's it's more in the world of remez, which is an interesting area. And perhaps either we'll do it as a separate shiur, or perhaps those of you that are interested can ask me afterwards, and I can go into the world of remez in that. Perhaps we might touch on it. Okay, so let's get started. Let's pose a couple of fundamental questions. It will not have escaped your notice that there are two parts to Pesach. There are very clearly two parts. Unlike Sukkot. Sukkot, there's only the Sukkot. Sukkot finishes, there's Chol HaMoed Sukkot, Sukkot finishes, and a new Yom Tov starts, which is called Shmini Atzeres. Not so Pesach. Pesach very clearly has two parts. And the question is why? And what are these two parts? And why are they necessary? That's the first and most obvious question. The Yerushalmi Chazal say very clearly that Geulas Mitzrayim was only finalized with Kriyas Yam Suf. So what was all that about? Why was it necessary that there should be two parts to Yetzias Mitzrayim? That's the first question. Another question, let's get to Yetzias Mitzrayim, to Kriyas Yam Suf itself. And here a most interesting thing happens. And that is we are surrounded, we are hemmed in by at the Yam Suf, and there doesn't seem to be any way out. And we think to ourselves, we know, I've got this. I know this. Vanitzak. This is what works. We know. And indeed, as the Ramban tells us, this is one of the yesodus that we learn from Yetzias Mitzrayim. Anochi Hashem Elokecha hamalcha me'eretz Mitzrayim harchev picha va'amalehu koyach hatfila vanitzak. We weren't deserving. And then we davened. So we start davening. Moshe Rabbeinu starts davening. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says the following. He says, Ma titzak Eloi. Again, if time permitted, we might talk about the Ma. Ma titzak Eloi. Loi eis laha'arich b'tfilah. It doesn't seem to be the right time. It's not the right thing to do at the moment to daven a long tefillah, laha'arich b'tfilah. And some of the Mefarshim pick up on the emphasis being on the ha'arochas ha'tfilah, that it's not time for a long tefillah, maybe a little bit of tefillah. But it is quite clear in the deeper sources that this was not about the length of the tefillah bichlal. This was about tefillah per se. It is not a time for tefillah. Tefillah is inappropriate here. Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'Yisrael. And the question is obviously why. Why is that? Why is it that in the situation of Yetzias Mitzrayim, tefillah and only tefillah is what extricated us? And when it came to the Yam Suf, tefillah was inappropriate. We are told that Ro'asa, another point, another question. Ro'asa shivcha al hayom mashlei ro Yechezkel ben Buzi bin Vuosai. Famous Mama Chazal, that the revelation that we saw and we appreciated, there was an aspect of the Rebbeinu Shalom that we came to appreciate at Yam Suf, was more than Yechezkel Hanavi saw in his famous vision when he sees the Kisei HaKavod. Rav Hutner asks a fascinating question. He says, why is it that we refer to Yechezkel's vision that he saw of the Kisei HaKavod? What about that of Yeshaya? Yeshaya also had a similar vision. Why is the one that is pertinent the one of Yechezkel and not the one of Yeshaya? And this may sound like a trivial question, but it will become, hopefully it will become clear that it's not trivial at all. Let's think for a little bit, before we begin to delve into it, let's think for a little bit about what happens at Kriyas Yam Suf. And let's just take, I'm going to just read out a short selection, which we say in davening, which will begin to give us some of the key themes, which we can then hopefully develop. Umalchusoi v'ratzoin kiblu aleihem. Moshe ubnei Yisrael l'cha'anu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru chula. So let's think, let me just translate. And the Rebbeinu Shalom's kingship, his sovereignty, they willingly accepted upon themselves. They said, or they responded the shira, and with great joy, they all said, Micha Moicha Ba'elim Hashem, and the other pasuk, Hashem Yimloch L'Olam Va'ed. So let's think about those themes. Malchusoi B'Rotzoin. We're talking about Malchus of Hashem, Hashem's sovereignty, his kingship. We're talking about the fact that we accepted it willingly. There was a Kabbalas Malchus, Umalchusoi V'Rotzoin Kiblu Aleihem, which we did b'simcha rabba. We did it with tremendous joy. And v'amru chulam, there is an emphasis on togetherness, on the multitudes, on the rabbim. Yachad, kulam, hoidu v'himlichu v'amru. Together, all of us, we acknowledged, hoidu, perhaps we'll come back to that. V'himlichu, again, that word. We accepted Hashem's sovereignty, which one does with fanfare, one does with joy. But we did it yachad, we did it kulam. And then again, malchus chara'u vanecha, b'ke'ayom lifnei Moshe. Again, malchus. And what do we say? We say Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed. There are actually two key phrases that we highlight. Tonight we'll focus on one of them. Micha moicha b'elim Hashem is one of them, and the other one is Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed. Yachad kulam hoidu v'imlichu v'amru Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed. Malchus chara'u vanecha, Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed. Let's just dissect that phrase a little bit. Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will reign as a melech forever. Really? Is that actually factually correct? Is that technically correct? Let's think about the famous idea of the Vilna Gaon that I'm sure you are familiar with. In his famous piece, he says, Rabbanim and Darshanim often talk about it, Rosh Hashanah time, Kila Hashem, HaMelucha, U'Moishel Bagoyim, and he talks about the difference between a melech and a moishel. A melech is a king, somebody who is enthroned, somebody who, by will of the people, they create him and call him or her a sovereign. And then you have an autocrat. You have somebody who's a dictator. One of my favorite one-liners. I asked my friend in Pyongyang, how are things? And he said, can't complain. Can't complain. That's a moishel. Kila Hashem HaMelucha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for us, is a melech. Unto him is melucha. But Moishel Bagoyim, as far as the nations of the world are concerned, they don't want to acknowledge him. And if they do it begrudgingly, he's a Moishel. It's when he's imposed. If there's no atheists in a foxhole, it's because they have nowhere else to turn to. Not because they've come to some recognition, unilateral recognition that there is a Borei Olam. So we know that that time will come when there will be a bittul, there will be a nullification is probably the wrong word, a cancellation. There will be a time, we hope very shortly, when it will be abundantly clear. There'll be no room for choice. There'll be no room for a choice of perception, where it will be forced upon you. The recognition, V'hoyo Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, and why we use the word melech is because that will be initial. But the time will come when there will be no element of choice anymore. And therefore asks Rav Hutner, how did we say Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed? We expressed a wish, and this is the key phrase. This is the climax. Hashem yimloich la'olam va'ed. This is the phrase that the Mesadrei HaTfilah, the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, identified as being the key phrase, or one of the two key phrases, the other one being Micha Moicha, which is the same concept if you think about it. We'll come back to it. It's Himlichu. They see the Shira as an enthronement, calling Hashem as sovereign, and Hashem Yimloich La'olam Va'ed. How can this be La'olam Va'ed? There will be a time when there will be no Bechira. We'll have no free choice anymore. And therefore the whole concept of choosing to enthrone will just be redundant. It won't work. I suppose those are probably the main questions, probably enough for us to get started with. We'll have to bring in the Omer. I did promise to bring in the Omer. The Omer is an important part of the journey that takes us from Pesach to Matan Torah. But just before we turn to that, let me share with you a question from the Zohar HaKadosh. The Zohar HaKadosh asks, surely what has to be a most obvious question. Vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdoi oz yashir. We believed in Hashem and Moshe, his servant, oz yashir. Then and only then did we sing. Vayiru, as the tells the Rav and others say, Vayar Yisrael, we saw Yod HaGdolah, and we didn't sing. Vayiru, we feared, we didn't sing. Vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdoi oz yashir. When we achieved a level, the apex, the climax, the highest level of emunah that one can possibly reach. Toshuri meirosh amona. We sing from the height, from the apex of emunah. Only then, vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdoi oz yashir. Asks the Zohar the obvious question: what aspect of emunah in Hashem became clear to them, which was not clear from a year of HaKadosh Baruch Hu being hisalalti b'Mitzrayim, of making a mockery of all of the rules and the laws of nature? V'chiyad Hashta asks the Zohar, Lo ha'aminu. Do you think they had not believed in Hashem until this point? It says, Vaya amein ha'am. And I'll read you out the answer. The words of the Zohar, and we'll come back to it. They had seen all the wonders that Hashem had done in Mitzrayim, and it was obvious. Elamai vayaminu, hahu mila de Omar Moshe de Omar vayomer Moshe el ha'am al tira'u hisyatzvu ura'u es Yeshuas Hashem. I'll translate that. What does it mean when it says vayaminu? It means in the words of Moshe, the command. Moshe had given them a command. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am. What did he say? Al tira'u. Don't be afraid. Hisyatzvu, stand firm. Ura'u es Yeshuas Hashem. And see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Yeshua, which he's going to do for you or towards you. It's his Yeshua. But stand firm and do not be afraid. That's the answer. Says the Zohar, what is the level of emunah that we gained, which we hadn't had until this point? It is something which gives a person, and indeed a nation, an ability to face something where there absolutely appears to be no way out at all. And not only trust in Hashem, not only have some sort of emunah bitochen, but to have zero fear, al tirol, to have no fear at all, to be so in control of one's emotional landscape, your inner world, to the point that it could be demanded of an entire nation. Al tirol, don't be afraid. See, it's one thing to say to them, okay, jump into the sea, and maybe a few Meshagoyim will go along. But to say to them, Al tirol, and I think it's the second part of the Pasuk is also incredibly instructive, really important. Al tirol, hisyatzvu, stand firm, u'ra'uas Yeshuas Hashem. And you will see the Yeshuas Hashem, which he's going to do for you in Mitzrayim. And that they managed to achieve. That was the Vaya'aminu. That is the Toshuri Meirosh Amona, to be able to sing Meirosh Amona. That is Malchusoi Barotzoin Kiblu Aleim. And it is Yachad. It's Kulam. There is an emphasis on us being all together. And let's just stop and think about that for 1 second. It always intrigued me. If you think about the birth of a nation, any nation, surely what element has to be present for a nation? Think of a ceremony, think of an event that will mark, that will herald the birth of a nation. There is one vital ingredient, surely, that has to be present. And I would suggest that is a nation. That is a lot of people. And think about Chatzos in Mitzrayim. Chatzos in Mitzrayim. If that was the moment, or as the Gemara suggests in Brachos, the two opinions, whether it was the next morning, Chipazon to Mitzrayim, Chipazon, but that was the moment that we became free, and we are all very much like we were this year. And there was a mashchis, or whoever it was, raging outside, and we weren't allowed out. So, but we were very, very, very much yechidim at that moment in time in our little units. And then when we come to Kriyas Yam Suf, the exact opposite. The exact opposite. And here, there is a very beautiful sforna, which I'd like to read and translate with you, in Parshas Re'eh. And the sforna comments on the following. It's talking about Pesach, Sheishis Yamim Teichal Matzis, Ubayom HaShvi, and on the 7th day of Pesach, what is that 7th day of Pesach? We asked the question at the beginning of the shiur. It is Atzeres. L'Hashem Elokecha. What is that word Atzeres? So it means two things. And if we get time, we'll see how perhaps they join together. The Targum, as always, says Knesh. Gather together. Gather together. This theme, this concept, Knesh, Atzeres, it's a gathering. Also, it means desist from creative activity. Atzeir, says Rashi, Atzeir atzmacha min ha-melacha. Don't do melacha. You want to know what Shvi Shel Pesach is? Lo sasa melacha. That's it. That's all it is. There are no mitzvahs associated with the second part of Pesach. The only Yom Tov min ha-Torah that has a clearly and a distinct second part. Lo sasa melacha. That's it. That's it. And it is Atzeres, it's a knesh, gather together. Because of course, as we have said, Yachad, Kulam, Hoidu, Kiblu Aleim, all of them. Says the Sforna, beautiful words. Says the Sforna, Ne'etzru boi Yisrael Yachtov. We were, it's in the passive voice. Ne'etzru boi Yisrael Yachtov. We were gathered together. We didn't have all very much choice about it. Yonosi b'chagvei hasela. We didn't have much choice. We were gathered together, Yachtov. Now here comes some important words. La'avoidas hokeil yizborach. To serve. There was an avoida. There was an avoida. Shvi shel Pesach. We were ne'etzru, we were Yachtov. La'avoidas hokeil yizborach. To serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. V'shoru lo'shira b'shvi shel chag hamatzos. V'sharu le'shira. It's fascinating. It's almost incidental. We were ne'etzru Yachtov la'avodas hokeil. There was an avodah to be done, and we did that avodah. And we sang shira. Notice in the order. If you were writing this sforno, you appreciate the chiddush of this sforno. We were put together for an avodah, and we sang shira. Lefichach nikdash oisai hayom. Therefore, the day becomes holy. We created that holiness. V'lo sa'aseh melacha. And because it's a yom kadosh, therefore you can't do melacha. Ki lulei zeh, were it not for this, says the Sforno, lo hayashvi kadosh klau, then the 7th day of Pesach would be no different than the 6th. K'moshe ha'inin b'chag HaSukkos, as indeed is the case with Sukkos. What's the 7th day? Shmini Atzeres, very Shana Rabbah, very nice. K'moshe ha'inin b'chag HaSukkos she'ein hashvi shaloi mikro kodesh. But this is a mikro kodesh. Why? Because we were ne'etzru yachdov la'avodas hokel. Still remains to be seen what this avodah is. V'sharu le'shira, and we sang shira. You could make a case to say that the shira became part of it, possibly. Let's begin to draw some of the threads together. I'm never going to do all of it, but let's begin to do some of it. What struck me many years ago was that there has to be a parallel between, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. We, every night in Shema, at the end of Shema, we say the pasuk at the end of Shlach Lecha, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, Asher Hitzeisi Eschem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Lihiyos Lachem Le'Elokim, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Double expression. I am Hashem your God, who took you out of Me'eretz Mitzrayim Lihiyos Lachem Le'Elokim, to be as an Elokim, God for you. Ani Hashem Elokeichem. What is the second Ani Hashem Elokeichem? And here Rashi says the following. Oid lamo ne'emar. Why was this said again? Shelo yomru Yisrael. So that Klal Yisrael should not say, Mipnei ma omar hamokoim. Why does Hashem tell us to do stuff? You know what? Maybe some people can treat a Yiddishkeit, and some people sadly and tragically do. They treat it as some sort of a buffet, where you take the choice canapes and you leave the soggy ones, the ones which don't fit into the zeitgeist, or the ones which are a bit difficult, or the ones I don't understand. I'll leave those. It's a bit of a menu. It's a pick and mix. Says the Rebbeinu Shalom, maybe we can opt out of some of them. It says, Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher tzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Fine. But maybe we have an option. Maybe we can opt out, derogate. Maybe we can decide not to opt in to the whole thing. Says the Rebbeinu Shalom, Al korchechem ani malkechem. Against your will, I am malkechem. I am your melech. Fascinating. First of all, how does that fit with the Vilna Gaon that we mentioned? Melech is, by definition, Melech is a king is one you have to enthrone. And here he's saying, Al korchechem ani malkechem. V'chein hu oimer, pasuk in Yechezkel, im loi b'yod chazaka, em loi chalechem. B'yod chazaka. Where have we heard that word before? B'yod chazaka. Em loi chalechem. And let's begin to think now about the parallel. So there were two parts. There are two parts. There's Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher tzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim liyos lachem le'Elokim. And then there is a part which is Ani Hashem Elokeichem, where there is an element of compulsion. There's an element of coercion, of kfiyah, where you're not given a choice. And yet somehow it manages to retain its identity as being connected to Malchus. And of course, the parallel to Matan Torah becomes striking, does it not? The very first time the Rebbeinu Shalom reveals himself to Moshe Rabbeinu at the sneh, and what does he say to him? V'hoitziacha es ha'om miMitzrayim ta'avdun es ha'Elokim al ha'hor hazeh. I'm revealing myself to you now, and I'm going to give you a shlichus. I'm giving you a message. I'm giving you a job. And we'll meet again on this very spot. You, the plural, all of you will ta'avdun elikim al hahar hazeh. On this har, at Matan Torah, there will be an avodah. Ta'avdun es elikim al hahar hazeh. There is an avodah to be done. So we have Yitzias Mitzrayim, which takes place in two parts. The second part is described by the Sforno as being Ne'etzru Yachdov La'avodas HaKel. The first part of Yitzias Mitzrayim, we are individuals. We are confined to barracks. And at the end, the final part of Yitzias Mitzrayim at Kriyas Yam Suf, we are Yachad, we are Kulam, we are Ne'etzru Yachdov, and there's La'avodas HaKel. And in Matan Torah we find, do we not? Two parts. There's Matan Torah in Yisrael, Matan Torah in Mishpatim, but let's just keep it simple. There is the famous question of Tosfos that there were two parts, there were two things. There was a Na'aseh v'nishma, where we willingly, unilaterally wanted and accepted Hashem's authority and sovereignty. And then Hashem turns round later and he compels us. Kofa alei mahar kegigis. He coerces us. He forces us. He denies us choice, so it would seem. And the Maharal, Tosfos asks the question and gives a number of answers. Why was it necessary? Once we had already willingly accepted. And perhaps we could ask the question in Yitzias Mitzrayim as well. And the Maharal says, because if we had been allowed just to say Na'aseh v'nishma, and on that basis we would have been given the Torah, there would have been room for a grievous error, a big mistake, very similar to that Rashi in Shlach Lecha. We could have thought Torah is an option, a beautiful option, a divine option perhaps, an amazing option, but an option nonetheless. And yes, an option which we signed up for. It is true, we said Na'aseh v'nishma. And the reality is otherwise. The reality is Torah is not an option. Im lo brisi yomam v'layla chukos shamayim v'oretz lo samti. Had we not said yes, even though we did, the world would have returned l'tohu v'avoyu, and as the Nefesh HaChaim and others explained to us, that's an ongoing thing. Torah is the stuff, it's the engine of all of reality. The 26 Deiros beforehand was Kilo Olam Chazdai. It wasn't an option. We would have labored under that misapprehension, and the Rebbeinu Shalom, therefore, Kofa Aleim Hahar Kegigis, he held the mountains over our heads, and he compelled us, according to many Mefarshim, not necessarily meant to be taken literally, as the Meshech Chochmah and others say, there was a clarity, an intellectual compulsion. We saw, Ata Horei Saladas, Ki Hashem Hu Elokim, Ein Oid Milvadoi. He opened our eyes and we saw there was no option. We may have thought we had an option. We may have patted ourselves on the back and said, wow, we said Na'aseh v'nishma, which we did, which was amazing. But in reality, there never was an option. And here we begin to come to a paradox. And it's difficult. It's not easy to explain it, but I'll do my best. It's a really, really, really important. It's perhaps one of the most important paradoxes. Ramchal wrote Das Tvunos to try and explain this. And the truth is, there is even a level at which perhaps there is not even meant to be an explanation. I mean, that's probably beyond the scope of this shiur. B'mokem yediyah ein bechira, b'mokem bechira ein yediyah. The Rambam, when he poses the question about Hashem's yichud, Yichud Hashem, which means that there is a plane of reality in which there is only Rabbeinu Shalom and everything is a foregone conclusion. And there is really no Bechira. And somehow that coexists with a world of Oynesh, with a world of action and consequence, with a world of Bechira. And the Rambam, when he asks the question, he says, what is he saying? At one level, he is saying, and I saw this and I heard this once, although not directly from Rav Moshe Shapiro. It's a deep idea, and I'll just say it quickly. The Maral Diskin has a very beautiful vort in the Akedah when Avram Avinu is given the seemingly impossible task, or the incomprehensible task. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has said to him, Ki b'Yitzchak yikor l'chol zara, and then he tells him, Kach es bincha, and bring him up. And Avram Avinu, not only does he not ask, that's not really what's going on. Lo hirharu acharei midoisai. There was not, in his deepest heart, there was no question. There was no question. There is no question. There can be no question. And when he was told, Al tishlach yodcha el hanar, then he asks. And the Maharil Diskin explains, because we have shnei ksuvim hamakchishim zeh zeh. If you have two psukim that contradict each other, ad sheyovoi hakosuv ashlishi, that until you have that third pasuk, and there is v'achriya beinehem, which is one of the Yud Gimel Midrash HaTorah Nidreshes behen, Yud Gimel being Echad also, there is no room for a question. And that is who Avraham Avinu is, and that is how he lives his life, and that is how we live our lives. And that is a subtle but very deep truth. It is knowing that on the one hand, we live in a world where we are given seichel, and we need to use that seichel, and we make choices, and those choices are important and they define us. Whilst at the same time, in parallel, there is something else going on, which is the inner reality, which is Yichud Hashem. Which is that the Rebbeinu Shalom, his will be that which reigns supreme, either as a result of our actions or despite our actions. Mevi goya livnei v'neihem. It happens, it is happening. We are players, and we are given the privilege and the responsibility of being players in that. But in the final analysis, ein oid milvadoi. And that is what we saw at Kriyas Yam Suf. That is what we were permitted to see. Even Yechezkel, who saw the Dmus Adam on the Kisei, which is what distinguishes his Nevuah, his Chazayin, from that of Yeshaya. He saw that there is an Adam on the Kisei HaKavod, that man plays a part. There is a Dmus of Adam. We saw beyond that. We saw that there is a world, and this is what the Zohar is trying to tell us. We saw there is, he showed us, and I'll read you just a short selection from 2 or 3 little pieces from the Maharal in Gvuras Hashem, where he says amazing things. This is at the end of Perek Mem Aleph. He says, "V'ro'u chachomim b'kriyas Yam Suf, ma shelo hoya b'chol hamakos." Chazal saw in Kriyas Yam Suf that which wasn't in all makos. Ki makos b'chayre shahoisa hamako yoyse gedola, lo hoya bitul teva li Yisrael ki im leMitzrayim. Aval Kriyas Yam Suf shahoya kan bitul teva li Yisrael v'hitzil oisam. They saw now the ultimate reality of the Ribbono Shel Olam's koyach, yichud Hashem. Oz hoyu Yisrael moishlim legamre el hateva, he says at the beginning of Perek Mem Beis, v'na'asu kedoshim nivdolim v'hoyu kedoshim la Hashem. At that moment in time, we became nivdolim, separate and kedoshim. And in Perek Mem Zayin, he says very clearly what he calls emunah hashenis, shehakol hu biyad Hashem ve'ein dover chutz mimenu. That everything is biyad Hashem, not just until now they saw hashgacha. They saw incredible hashgacha with the Esem Aklis. But the micha meicha, that there is no other, that Hashem yimloich lo'olam va'od, that they saw now. And what the Zohar is saying is an amazing thing. Tefillah is incredibly powerful. It is one of the chukim in the Teva. It's a spiritual chayk, but it's a spiritual chayk within Teva. If we only knew, if we only had real emunah, and we really knew and saw what tefillah does. And it took us out of Mitzrayim, as the Ramban tells us. But then it came the time and the place to become privy to something beyond that. So we started davening. We started engaging in the world of action and reaction. And Hashem says, no, this is not a time for tefillah now. This is not about you. This is about me. Ba'atika Talia Milsa. There is one thing, however, that you can do. One thing and one thing only. But not, it can't be something which is active by definition. It can't be active, because the minute it is active, it is something that you do, then that triggers a reaction. And to that extent, it then diminishes and minimizes from what I'm trying to achieve, which is showing you Yichud Hashem, that there is no other. And therefore, by definition, it is going to have to be something which is going to take place internally. And it's going to have to be passive. It's going to have to be negative. Al Tiro. Roish Toshuri me Roish Amona. Roish Amona. Emunah and Bitochen, very, very simply put. Emunah is primarily, although it's a muscle, a ruchnias dika muscle, but it is connected to the seichel, whereas Bitochen, the Roish Amona, is connected exclusively to the world of emotions. In the famous definition of the Chovos Halvavos in the beginning of Shara Bitochen, it is menuchas nefesh haboteach. The calm, the equanimity, the tranquility, the absolute control, the knowledge, which then transmits itself to the emotional world. Al chayenu hamsurim biyadecha. That's a massive avodah. Netzru yachtov la'avodas hokel. Because Yichud Hashem, just as a side point, is manifest primarily, it's not for Yechidim, it's for the Am. Yichud Hashem is through the Klal. That's a technical point. So there was an avodah. Vaya'amen, vayaminu b'Hashem. How, what? B'hahu milah. In those words, says the Zohar, that Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, Al tiro, don't be afraid. Hisiatzvu uru'u, and you will see Yeshuas Hashem. This is his show. And therefore, tefillah would have been absolutely the wrong thing. It's very unusual. That was the avodah. And therefore, of course, on Shvi Shel Pesach, what do? Nothing. Lo yisasu malacha. K'neish, be together and don't do malacha. That's the connection between the two. And the Tavdunas Elokim ala hor hazeh likewise was the same thing. One more little piece. We haven't even mentioned the Omer. I don't think we're going to get to it. It's perhaps a little bit ambitious, because this is enough perhaps to focus on. And that is, Reb Gedalia Shah says a beautiful vort. And I, on occasion, I've used an experience I had in my own life. It's a bit sad. When I was in Gibraltar, there was a tragic story of a young man who was very brilliant. He was a doctor, he was a GP, and unfortunately he was a paranoid schizophrenic. And he told me he would feel when his paranoia would descend upon him, and what he would do when that happened was, as he felt it coming on, he would go to the mental hospital, the KG5, and he would check himself in. He would section himself. He'd put his passport on the desk and say, "Lock me up." He felt it. He knew. He knew when he was lucid. He knew that there would be times when he wasn't, and he chose to put himself in the straitjacket. He accepted that, and it was a smart thing. It says Reb Gedalia, when we said Nasa v'nishma, one of the things, the avodah that we had to do, was to recognize that there are times in our lives when we are enthused, when we are inspired, when we're on a roll, and we're quite happy to say, Na'aseh v'nishma. It's no big deal to open up the Gemara, to run to davening, to feel enthused, but at the same time to know and to realize that there will be times, katnus demoichin, when we won't be bothered. And to choose to commit ourselves to a system that we know is going to impose upon us and make demands of us. Perhaps one can use marriage as a metaphor. It's not a metaphor, Chris, in Matan Torah. What happens? You think about it. You buy, something as inconsequential as travel insurance. You get I don't know what the law is here. In England, you get 14 or 28 days. You can change your mind. Imagine standing under the chuppah. P.S. If it doesn't work out within 28 days, I'd like the ring back, and I'd like to imagine. Why not? It's very sensible. It's perhaps the biggest decision with the most consequences, which people do get wrong. How come? Because if there is any chance whatsoever that it's going to be successful, you have to go all in. You have to jump into that sea. You have to commit 1,000,000%. You have to recognize that this is the right thing for me, and I am going to put koiches into this. Na'aseh v'nishma, but that's not to rest on my laurels. There'll be a kof alei mahar kegigis. There'll be a first part of Anochi Hashem Elokeichem, but there'll be another part. Im lo biyad chazaka em lo chalechem. And how, says Rav Hutner with a stroke of genius, how can we say Hashem yimloich la'olam va'od? Because we can choose him as our melech forever, and therefore even at a time when of necessity bechira will be a thing of the past, and it'll be blindingly obvious, we'll be able to turn around and say, we said Hashem yimloich forever, we chose it. And then it'll be a yimloich la'olam va'od. And then you can say, umalchusoi, we yearn for the time, umalchusoi bakoil moshala. You can have his malchus, can be moshala. But that's an avodah. That's an avodah. And although we're beginning to run out of time a little bit, it would be pointless to begin to start bringing in the Omer, but so maybe let's talk a little bit more about Kriyas Yam Suf. What happened then And let's just delve very slightly into the world of Remez, only very slightly. There's a lot more where this came from. But the Maharal says a beautiful thing in a number of places. The Maharal says that water, and by the way, have you ever thought about the fact that there's two words, which I think in almost every language, I haven't done a proper check, but certainly in the languages that I'm familiar with, the words what and water are always the same. Vas, Wasser, qua, aqua, ma, mayim. And it's not a joke, because the Maharal points out two things about water. Number one, it's always in the plural. It's always in the plural, it's never in the singular. And number two, water, he says, is that which is, by definition, what does it do? It flows and it just assumes the shape of the container it finds itself in. It is, in his words, chomer with no tzura. It represents taiva in deeper thought, just going wherever your heart takes you, wherever your desires take you. And here, when it came to Kriyas Yam Suf, what happened was kol mayim sheba olam. All the mayim in the world, every mayim was split and brought into its component parts of asking and recognizing the ma. And it really is not just a remez. It really does go deeper than this. Moshe Rabbeinu is put in the water, and then he is called Moshe because min hamayim meshisihu, says the Maharal, he is drawn away from water. He is the Adam, which by the way is also the gematria of Ma. He is the Adam. He assumes tzuras Adam. And therefore, at that moment in time, Moshe, therefore the waters nitzlu k'moinei, they stand, they're no longer just flowing. And kol mayim sheba olam, every aspect of nature which was free-flowing, we were given control over through Moshe Rabbeinu. And from that moment on, Malchusoi Barotzon Kiblu Aleihem, we saw and we accepted and we realized that we're a nation, we're no longer individuals. And we have a melech. That melech is the Rebbeinu Shalom who runs the entire show. We saw Yichud Hashem. We saw that there is a plan and he runs the world. We have a little part to play in it. But at Kriyas Yam Suf, we saw the avoda was to recognize that the consequence, the outcome, is absolutely up to him. And that's not an easy thing. It's one of the hardest things. It's easy for me to say the words. It's perhaps one of the hardest things for people to genuinely internalize. Imagine, let's just think about it. Let me put this in brutal terms, in very stark terms, and then we'll leave it here. Think about it. We spend our entire lives doing an avoda to a Rebbeinu Shalom who has no need of it. Im tzodakto matitein lo. We add nothing to who or what he is. The net result, the outcome of everything that is going to be is a foregone conclusion. It is going to happen. Moshiach is going to come. Either as a result of our actions, we're given the privilege of having something to do with it, but the final result, we live in a world where we are given the idea that we have real control and that we dictate outcomes. And then to have the realization that whilst it is true, we have the responsibility for avoda, for yiras shamayim, for all the things that we hakol b'dei shamayim chutz mi yiras shamayim, but at the same time, Hashem yimloch lo'olam va'ed, and the outcome is a foregone conclusion. But, says the Maharal in another place earlier on in Gevuras, and with this I'll finish, there is an incredible benefit to somebody who is genuinely able to live their lives that way. And I think what we're living through at the moment is so clearly that. Everything that we thought we knew and controlled, and everything is turned on its head, and nobody has a clue. That's the bottom line. Nobody has a clue. Not how will the economy recover, but will the economy recover? Nobody knows. Is there a new strain coming out of China? It is a possibility. Read stuff that's happening. Try not to anymore. It's ridiculous. But and with this I want to finish. We say, Besimcha Rabba v'amru chulam. And the Maharal earlier on in Gevurus asks the question, I think it's Perek Zayin, forget. He says, how does Simcha come into it? Now, besides for the obvious that when you are coronating a king, by definition there is Simcha, but there's something else. And that is, imagine living your life with the knowledge, focused, purposeful, meaningful. I have an avodah to do, but I am not responsible. Ultimately, I'm responsible to do my bit as much and as best as I possibly can. My avodah, my chesed, my Yerushalayim, my midas. And that is my responsibility. But I don't have the world on my shoulders. The net result of that, says the Maharal, and with this he says is actually by Memoriva, that was the problem of Kaas, was that there was a lack of simcha. If one is able to genuinely inculcate that worldview, and not just say the words like I am, but mean it and live it, the result is no anxiety. The result is less worry and fear and frustration. B'simcha rabba v'amru chulam micha moicha ba'elam Hashem. Kirvanu hamokim, as the Rambam says, liyichudai. And then we are able to sing Toshuri meiroi shamana. And we know from that moment on, mikan remez l'tchias hamesim in HaTorah, anything can happen. Rebbeinu Shalom is the boss. Micha moicha ba'elam Hashem, Hashem yimloich la'olam v'oed. Thank you for listening, and have a very good evening. Cult.